Just a minute. All right, grab your seat. Welcome to Tabula Poetica. Maureen Alsop is here to kick off our events this year, and I'm glad to see you all here. I want to thank a few people, and then we'll have Charlene Baldwin, the Dean of the Library, introduce the visiting poet tonight. As I'm thanking random people, pull out your cell phone and turn it off so that it does not ring during the reading. And also, as the poet is reading, if you formulate any questions, we'll have some Q&A immediately following the reading. In addition, Maureen's book is available for sale around the corner near the elevators. Her book is called Mantic, and so if you don't have that and you like what you hear, you should definitely get a copy, and she'll be here to sign that if you'd like. The thank yous. Let's all give a round of applause to the chair of the English department, Joanna Levin. Who has been very supportive of this whole program and technically signed off to make sure you had the Rice Krispie treats tonight. Also, the Dean of Wilkinson College, Patrick Fury, has been very supportive of the project, and Charlene Baldwin, Dean of the Libraries, has welcomed us in for the readings time and time again. And so we've kicked students out of their study area so that they have to have poetry instead. Who else am I forgetting? Poets and Writers gave us some small grants for all the visiting writers this semester, and we're very grateful to that external grant assistance. That's very important for sustaining the program. I also want to thank Debbie Thacker, who is our department admin, and she does all the logistics, all the behind-the-scenes work to make sure that somebody has been ordered to set up the microphone and whatnot. So she does the nitty-gritty stuff behind the scenes. I think that's all for the thank yous. As long as everybody's cell phone is off, we're good to go. Here's Charlene Baldwin to introduce the poet.
Hello, everyone. Yes, we are so happy in the Leatherby Libraries to host a new season of Tabula Poetica. This room is ideally suited for such an atmosphere, and we are really honored that the Wilkinson College and Tabula Poetica, the English department, and all find it acceptable to have you all come in here and spend this time with us here in the library. The exhibit that's up right now will only be here for another week. I just want to call your attention to it because it's Mary Hebner's work where she interprets traveling with her photographic anthropologist or anthropological photographer, I don't know which way it goes, around the world, and then she reinterprets into art what she's seen on her travels, and it's really quite remarkable, the work that she's done. So she's a Santa Barbara artist. So I just want to mention it to you. So you're surrounded by wonderful, wonderful things, visual as well as you'll be hearing the poetry tonight. So it's my pleasure to be introducing our poet, our visiting poet tonight, Maureen Alsop. You can read her her credentials, I guess you might call it, on her website. Of course, you can learn there all the names of all the books that she's published of poetry, and that she's won several prizes of poetry, including the Harper Pellet's Milton Kessler Memorial Prize for Poetry and the Bitter Oleander's Francis Locke Memorial Poetry Prize, and that she has published her poetry not just in the books, but also in many prestigious journals. And I would like to know more about the translations she's been doing for some poets, and I think that's really a wonderful piece of this. But I talked to her, and I learned a little bit more about her own personal journey. That she was born in Michigan and went to Michigan State University, and then did her graduate work in Virginia, And she spent 5 years in Australia. I guess that's where she met her husband, and he's an Aussie, I guess, and probably got inspirations there as well, and lives in Palm Springs. But also from her bio, you read that she is the editor for a journal called Inlandia, a literary journal. And it's the oddest thing that today in the Press Enterprise, that's my paper in Riverside where I live, in the local extra section on the front page, there is an article by Marian Mitchell Wilson. And she is the one who is writing about moving beyond the cusp. And she's talking about the Inlandia Institute and the work they're doing out there in Riverside. And it's just so incredible that fortuitously here we have a member of that team out there of the Inlandia Institute in Riverside. And here I am reading it this morning and then introducing you tonight, Maureen. So it is just such a pleasure. And Marian ends her article with just a couple of words that I want to say by way of concluding this introduction. We are telling our own stories in our own regional voice. We are a vibrant literary center and regional publisher moving beyond the cusp. Something is coming, something very, very good. And I think that typifies what we're going to hear tonight, too. So let's all welcome Maureen Alsop to the podium and listen to her wonderful work. Maureen.
Wow, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Charlotte Baldwin, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I know Marian Mitchell Wilson is also a librarian, which is, I think librarians will save the universe when we're all perished. And thank you so much to Chapman University, the Department of English, to Tabula Poetica, for Anna Leahy and Allison Bennis-White for making me feel so welcome here today, and just for sharing so much. I just feel enriched already just being here and being on campus. I've experienced so much joy, and I'm just so honored to be here. I really, really appreciate your support. So the first section of poems I'll be reading really are from Mantic, and Mantic is like basically a form of divination. It's sort of a multicultural. You'll find it in almost every culture from around the world. Basically, they're each different types of divinations and I'll explain each one as we go. And I didn't try all of them, but some of them I did. So I'll just enjoy the ride of the poetry and don't overanalyze, just relax. First one is necromancy, and it's sort of a way to salute this season of autumn. Necromancy is a divination by means of communication with the dead. Where all the deciduous trees break open and we are washed out, at that place in Monroe, Iowa, when the waitress takes your order at that faraway diner, you will blink. You consider the looseness of your thirst. You will be cut into the song of katydid. Occasionally a high beam touches your forehead. The silver jangle of beads grace your ears. Lay down tonight under the tender weave of bells, flowering hazel, strange music, thistles in your wool sweater. Later this fall you will know you are not alive. Essence of mushroom and scotch, swarm of three grouse. What finds you again is you. You who find love in secret will not know the tremble of the body. Your hair will be filled with kisses, larkspur, birdseed. A crown of bees fill the mirror. Epiphany. The moment your body deserted the soul, a last spasm of air passed through your right nostril. I will tell you how it happened. Without mercy and too late, you had learned that you were made to be loved. Someone soaked your nakedness in honey and oiled your chest with picantha. Your head was shaved. The red dark room was lit by a single votive, and the draft from the hallway coaxed the flame to dance. Your voice rose, pointless, as no one could hear you. Muttering, you still thought you remembered and insisted on it. You said, I remember stalling over the wide white bed. They say it is this, love. In readiness, the radio failed. A blueprint of static clamped over your ears. A gray heat swarmed your throat. The briefest face, you say. From cloud, you say. From the deep north, I watched and could do nothing to help. These next few poems are slightly based on the death of my father. Oranomancy, a divination by means of the heavens. Stasis equals your belief in a window. From it, you see a black maple spackle a hospital's brick into aubergine. The glass carries a yellow glaze of traffic, the whirl of crimson wingtips, the slop of salt water. Up high in the elms, light disappears into the bark of a bird that dips among the red thrash of leaves. The voice of 3 ships circle the harbor, where a small house on the shores made real by the sun. You would bury your song and walk backward, keyless, into the sound of locks, that you were not human, that there would be no one to ask, but that you needed to ask in order to live. Trucks excite grasses under rain, bear scat, egg peel of nuthatch and bird skulls scattered through mulberry. There's a ticking in the mind that thorns and unfurls into thistle. You struggle, but still can't see what's missing. While once you ask yourself, why stumble? Ask yourself, gentle, why laugh? You're not special. You're not special. No comfort in language. Real words are soundless. But you gather no words, believing you still hear him. But when you speak of his voice, you close the window to the ocean. A blurred photograph of the sunlight that murdered your father's hiddenness, or how light takes leave of the body. How odd the assembled horses seemed in the distance, standing under the sparkle ball, crisp in nutmeg silhouette. Mildew crusts the brown-eyed trunks of the umber trees. He waits hours, not understanding where he is. Under the leaves, under the topmost limbs of the scrub oak, the blue mare lips the spittle of white apple blossoms. Between her and the blossoms rises the antique smell of lovers. Blood passes through the rooms of her gray lineage. There is no one here to separate him from this observance. He remembers the young nurse who watched him die. She knelt, not knowing how to read his face, until the flush script of his secret burst like a bonfire over a winter lake. A red flare toppling thaw. He would like to explain to you the point at which the untouched stones might hiss under the weight of the current. Water guiding him deeper toward the voices of those who have gone before. Fortification of pebbles into sand like teeth clacking against the syllabic dark. But these were the rushing sounds of the sucking wind through cedar. Later, the clerk with the wide lips and sea blue skirt handed you his wallet. That small bulk of leather, still filled with his heat, warmed your palm, as if he'd simply stepped out of the room. Belladonna burning long, bright sentences insulates the orchard. Plush afternoon figures held billowing. Arrange with restraint the tiny flames of your trim dress. Now sparrows flit through his ribs. He looks out over the grass beyond the dirt road. He is nowhere near these trees, nor your faint reflection, continuance, or sunlight. You are not enough. His voice streams into the boundaries of waking, which cannot be dreamed. Radiesthesia, the science of using the vibrational fields of the human body to access information, often using specially calibrated instruments. His voice entered where it entered, framing my isolation there, in between the pointed oasis as I call him back into the calm, into the too late. Oh, please know, feeble I am in telling, as I go now with my assassin. The prairie settles in my thumbnail as if a story could be scraped and traced back up by meditation. A child stranger arrives in my hand as a circle of grass disperses, molding a small shave where the gauze of the old trees broadly sluice the sky. All this in my palm. Were I kissed by the memorialization of snow, I would slow into immeasurable margins. By the rumor you would not go back, I was made. Were I the indecipherable names, my father and the analogous map of all fathers. His voice rose through the window. Now I, like a stranger, hold my ear pressed to the eye of my heart. Incognizant, uncareful, I was intimate with his request that he might die. Since we were once walking together beneath the interlaced spruce, fir, pine. Since we are now walking into the near spark, his short fibrillation, and this is my third time back, under those needles, amid pots of geranium, musk, of frankincense warms the perimeter. Christen me by measures of dusk. Midnight, part pantomime, is a blade, leveling metallic flames across the lawn. And this particular definition I did attempt is called gyromancy. And it involves, it's a divination by walking around at a circle of letters until dizzy, and you fall down on the letters, and it tells you the direction to take. So I just made myself dizzy one day, and then I tried to write a poem. So this is what came out. So you go whither, so muscled in foxglove. So the surface of passion flowers scent known to the lungs will be touched by the mouth. So a camera's song leans over the guardrail. So the graffiti of circles. So lexicon is devoured by chalk in the grassland. So omega, so bilge. So yesterday the tradition of order was left to the entangled hawfinch. So I refused. So I am not a lady, not your supper jug, your hunt of her. So dumpling, who's your fried chicken? Even in neon fragment, even in mastic erotic red, your taste of me's dispensed. So inconsolable keystrokes do not withdraw from honesty, as honesty is in itself inconsolable. So found I was without you. I do not remember how you left. Transparent, history steeped in your head. So I held my finger to the small blossoms of your eyelids. So I told the sun to go, and there it spread. So flagstone, so eaglet. Floromancy, a divination by means of flowers. Stammered currents rouse banks of purple crocus. Your birth occurred when the pale afternoon waters hollowed out a line of tamarisk trees. You now follow its spine of dry needles. Had you made an error, then you might walk east, never noticing the cow dung in the boots of a passing soldier lay against lucent birch. Back through wood rot, you shiver in a blade of heat, an eel in your jugular. Your voice, a solar inflection, can no longer carry your words. One would say it might be over. But out of the sky's distillery of starlings, another replies, they will usher you. Your beard is a barnacle lowering into the thirst of a dog's bark, into the green beyond which barber boats and pontoons drift like scores of unnamed mammals. You are midnight, a black sun, roots washed, catching a thread of gnats off the surface. But your motions may be a meaningless addenda, a mixture of breath's aperture, entrails, lobelia. You will not be greeted. Salvia spirals up from a flickered bottle, backed by a sputtering lantern. The doorway is a stream upon which the lantern sets. Hunger softens a spume of flies. Your inflection blossoms. The guardian's accurate shotgun upon your brow. Alone in the farm room, you remained untouched by the juniper rasp in the tree window. The funerary rope from the mauled bodies hung from a north rafter. You heard the chirrup of the kid goat, the burned silverfish in her fur lung. Too much energy to cry, so you would. Holy apostolic field, the doling slothed her radiance. Now it is yours, stranger. You who held the mauled body, suckled her sow eyes closed, undercurrent of lupine in the mud bloom. You wanted to taste the clay intestine, the corridor of her far-off bells. Your Napoleon facade beamed. Now it's yesterday at the Abbey. Keyholes in limestone reveal the missing animal face. You kissed her mildew knapsack, made a coat of minerals, placed your body in the wood box, lit the stove. Restive, in your small purring, you consider her nose capillaries leaking blossoms. What's left her flees into the glade. Fascia of purple pollen, clouds of the mountain, as does this guardian who holds her image as an accurate shotgun upon your brow. Bequest. A blessing of ghost bees lulls the serum of your speech. O unlit fire, your confection in the mouth upon the mouth of whose name? Grass in the whispered landscape leaks a dry glow. Here, primitive boughs of lilac undress the swallow's eye. The bullious sky's slow vigilance is reborn, and the quiet of the fuck bodies, their infinite pages, are laid open in the sun's library. Belief. And I am turning the gold cache of the city's outer rim, supplicating the surface with messages. I am with horses, I am with deer, I am with you in daylight, though you cannot see. O languish, ghosts read the open hills, the shadows drunken length, the cause and the effect of ghosts in my voice were you not answered. You might come to me, acknowledged by endearment's offering. You might meet me in the gloss at the ravine's edge, and we might call this the lakeshore equation, or the conspicuous midday blanch, or the shimmering. Notes from the Blue Terrace. The pink lungs of a mule strain towards shade, his yellowed lips saliva slick. The gardener wanders into the hills, unclothed in delirium. The nub of his work thickens into bloom. He spends the day threshing, thrashing, thatching, until the weight of a painted magpie steadies him. One arm of the constellation is a wing glazed with heat, a perfectly beautiful waste of talent. Along the riverbank I water my horse. The tin rain slosh shimmers down her flank. The gardener stops and asks me, "What is it to die like this?" He opens his palm. He sees nothing in me astonished by his offering. I am in the place he would not circle, a lovely drop in his voice, the makeshift sound of a tanager in the backyard of a monastery. The gardener turns in shadow to retrieve a blue trace of awkwardness. The sun here is also crazed. Skyomancy, divination by means of communication with the shades of the dead. The terebinth tree releases too late. Moire chemise spills through the boughs. A goodwill coat closets the red surge, Swiss dots, shade spurts in the silent palette of owl moss. I saw my love walking in the field. He lay down among the spinifex and spirea. Our postcordial vows trespass the private pines. Less hot the rain drones among the spruce. I hear him. His tinseled leaves carpet his uncarpeted house. Kledomancy, sleep in raven's throat. Divination by means of chance remarks that are spoken without premeditation. Stitch by stitch in the shore's seam, I measured fog's rotation. Thick loaves of air rounded stone cliffs. Waves bit gulls in a loose crochet, as you plucked a clear path of allegiance to your small environs. The lesser nighthawk foraged under a street lamp. Had you seen the faces of the holy? Had you overthrown what lifted you? For hours I mended the black pages of water and the creases in the sand where you disappeared. From my sleep in the raven's throat, I saw you walking in the sun. I've forgotten the depth of the lake, the liquor swill of reeds under your skin. And the next few poems are from an earlier collection from Apparition Wren. Spinnaker Shift. Twice this winter I deceived myself. The doves, hard worn by the desert salt pan, had vanished. But I woke to hear them cooing on the roof like little gurgling drums. It was as if I'd sailed through the portrait of a storm. Staggered sails slapped backward through ink-spun shipyards, and a tremulous flutter of feathers hung in the air. Later, darkness fell across the afternoon. The milk-gray sky swirled and wrinkled. That same winter, drops of snow rested themselves down into a sheet of pewter. There comes a death time when the world makes strange, and love winces before her water breaks. And this is a longer poem in various sections that are not identified as sections, but daguerreotype portrait of woman and bird. A woman, a soldier, a bird, all born within cages, learned quickly to pipe songs which rose wildly upward into the sky's orange skirt and changed into liquid. They were narrowed eventually by the weave between clouds. In the mine's well alleyway, a wavering billboard holds the image of an 8-year-old girl and a bicycle she is yet unable to ride. The wind pulls her lured. She is crossing now over crosswalk dust and a shadow-broken shoreline. When larks fall from the sky, an indiscriminate sound, a bellow, ruptures in the reeds, scrape of coccyx and lull. Wakeful wing beats alternate with short periods of sailing. The heart's iris dilates, machinery lips swell. The monkey inside the child pedals madly to maintain motion's steadiness. How does she measure her motive to meet unconscious wing? She studies herself, steadies the mirror. She props her nipple into the cup of her palm. Beneath her left breast, a nest of cartilage and wing exposed. Tremor and breath. Half dressed by moonlight, gazing, she sees her face backward. In the unfurnished room, windows warped with winter frost, she glances the tremble and slip of leaves from the pin oak. The woman inside the girl will never know whether she's seen herself. She will grow from the radiance of the girl's warmth. The girl will depart without contemplation or shade. The woman will lie down with a soldier who carries a letter in his left hip pocket, a letter from his brother who fell down the stairwell at the Osawatomie Sanatorium during the war. She has forgotten his face. He is nothing but a wave capping at sea, or a stain in the linoleum, something occasionally referred to. Each winter he unfolded the cramped paper and read to her. His ink thinned annually until she was left, after 2 decades, with the page that read. Specimens of gray feathers and soot, fragments pulsing wildly within her veins. Little birds with stitched-up eyes soaring under lithium rain clouds. He is what made her small as she carved him from wood, shaving his face with a penknife. He rises from the struggling midground, a wisp of fuel. He is the thud where the heart fell from the bow. No one will ask about the aperture of lilacs unfolding or the small animal memory of sparrows. They are phases. She sketches diagrammatic references to landscape. She assigns rooms for each tree. The unit between trees is a weightless motion. Loose bits of gravel drop from her pen. Horses are pulled out of her body, blown open and spinning from the lungs. Knotted faces in the box elders twist into the horizon. Filament roots silence her. A serpent's whistle advances through the glowing dust. The slack softness in the woman's jaw was the light turning its anchorage. Into what does she not sink? Slag heap and shoal at the edge of town, a field where cicadas crackle from the treetops and the stars rattle. And last spring I had the honor of coming to join a reading on persona poems, and this is actually a persona poem. And there is an accent that came to me with this poem, so I will honor that accent, that voice, because I lived in the South for a little while. It's a Southern voice. The poem's called Butcher's Wife. I ached for his bookkeeper brother, but my voice narrow like the slit lids of those pigs with missing eyes. I never learnt to bear the odor, so I hid upstairs neath blankets till noon, lest his burnt gravy voice slice back of my neck. My half-sleep shudders as he slips me tongue kisses. Excrement, piss, and dry saliva rub my back with his marred fingers. Meat juice looms his pores, his clenched teeth grind like bones of that bull who dent kick the abattoir's truck every time I fuck him. Thunk, thunk. My hands quick as an axe at the till. I slam the door, and his brother scratches my day's remains like a chicken. Yesterday I heard from the heifer's ribs a heartbeat still, even as the crimson waters ran off her like sap. And forthcoming in the upcoming Tabula Poetica, there was a call for reasons for why people might write poetry or why I write poetry. And so I'm going to read my Ars Poetica, which was part of the premise. It's short. At the table of longing, an opal sea churned in my cup. Waves closed over the shores. But this memory of salt salvaged my thirst. Like a skittish horse bearing the scars of its own blood, I rode over thigh-high hills into mingled light. Just a few more poems here. I'll finish off. Approbation. The sun, the erasure of weeds press west against each window. Love's mouth is a wound made to answer. I am filled by incalculable sounds, wherein the body defines itself for failing. I am filled by the rain, in the mind entering. I hear the rain's footstep lay waste in the grass crashing over. I am an old knife, softening. I am oars of a ghost ship, wherein the sea swells its salt in me. Shores splinter the depth of the no more world. Only pages flit past. Owl stripes in the linden leaves, quills sanctioned to the places the body abandoned. Untitled Winter. You wrote your own sky beyond the meadow, closed the light, then wrote a new twilight. Transient, I dream forms in exchange of your face, pressed against the window pane. You are looking out across the salt lake at the empire's boundary. Snow drifts under lanterns, spine-white shores. I put your mind into the hand of my other mind's heart. You hear voices in an unnamed manifold, voices dwelling in the other voice. We inhabit the source, ghosts beneath the earth's crust. She asks, stranger, why do you say other when you put your mind into your other's hand? She inhabits shades turning in the grass at the doorway, sun-baked origins, amaurosis before language. I'll stop right there. Thank you so much for your attention and time.
So, Maureen mentioned Tab, the journal that we do. If you don't have a copy of the print issue, there's some on the table where the bookstore is selling the books, and you can have the copy of Tab for free. The Why I Write Poetry issues, one is going up, what's today, Tuesday? One goes up tomorrow. That's the first one, and then we'll have a second one the second Wednesday of October. So there's two Why I Write Poetry issues and different takes on that. Maureen's, I believe, is in the October issue. And I think it's really an interesting way to see the poet's aesthetic while they're talking about poetry, not actually in the poem itself. Why don't we open it up for a few questions? If you have any questions for our visiting poet, either about her work or her process.
I'm not sure exactly which poem. I would be very inconsistent in everything I do. So that might be one reason. Which poem was it? Do you know? Yes. Thank you. I, yeah, and one of the poems, Epiphany, you mentioned, I did read. And I would say my reasons, my logical brain would say that it's I like ampersands, which is not logical, but and I think it's a quickened way for me to just connect language, and then the and would draw it out more in terms of sound. So that's probably one of the strategies I was after, and I feel comfortable mixing that, so that's why I mixed them. I don't know if that's a literary reason, but the sound would be part of it, and the linkage of the language, the words. Like honey and oiled. To me, you could almost do it without. You could do honey oiled, but to at least keep the reader in the same plane, knowing that it's two separate ideas. Yes. I love that question because, I had part of my intention in some of these divinations was to actually try and interpret, signs of some sort that I could create through these like archaic processes that, but I didn't end up doing that on all of them. So there were a few that I actually tried, like that one and I didn't really have the letters spread out, but I tried the spinning around and then just went back inside and, kind of just got my blood flowing, and then I could sit down and some of them, like I think like the necromancy, where there's this sense of the dead or the haunting or the other realm that we're not aware of, which is sort of more of a meditative process. But I didn't try all of them, although some pieces of it have come, in the poems have come from experiences around the different divinations. So. I think I'd read some other poems, like necromancy type poems, and so I just started to sort of research, and I realized like there are so many of these divinations that they're endless, and then if you run out of those, you could create your own. So I thought I was just excited by the idea of it, and it kind of gave me a channel, really, to just keep exploring through. Oh, have I created any? None. Well, I haven't worn them out yet. So when I wear them out, then I'll create some new ones. I think it's fair game. I think it's open slather. So. Ooh, of the divination of the. Actually, I think I do like necromancy the best, because it really takes me somewhere else. And when I was writing it, I wasn't specifically thinking about anywhere particular, so not that it was like carrying me into some other, but I just like the location. I've never been to Monroe, Iowa. I now really want to go there, and sit in a cafe and have a light shine on my forehead from a car in the parking lot. So if anyone wants to go with me, so it just let me take my imagination somewhere, and it just came. It was one of those poems that came kind of rapidly and quickly for me, which is not always the case. I mean, I still played around with it and revised it, but yeah. So. Yeah, I think all of us in life are kind of looking for an answer of some sort at some time on any sort of occasion. And I think this idea of being able to prophesize, what's going to happen, what will be next, is sort of, I mean, I don't think, I wish I could predict the lottery, but it gave me sort of an outlet. And I guess, part of it is the loss, the idea that, we are transient, and I talked about that earlier today. and that longing for things that are gone. So not that it answers for me where do we go, but it gave me a channel with which to sort of dissect that emotion of loss and moving forward, knowing that I too one day will be gone is, I suppose, part of that. So that's, I guess, part of the one of the themes around the idea of seeing the future is you're going to end up seeing there is no future. Sounds awful, but so that would. Yeah. Well, sometimes I work very intuitively. So sometimes I just feel like I know when this is done. I can't take it any further. Or sometimes I'll just have that aha, this is it. I just move that one piece of one sentence or half a phrase, or I omit something, and I'm like, that's it. I've captured it. And I was saying earlier too. I mean, I go back to the quote. Often a poem is finished when it's abandoned. Sometimes just stepping away from it long enough that you can go back and look at it objectively, and it's either finished or you know how to finish it. So that's been my experience, and it hasn't always been that way. I suppose I just kept reworking and reworking and reworking until I felt that it was refined and I couldn't work on it anymore. But we were talking earlier today too that even a poem where it's very finished, there might be some way to look at it in a different way and draw it into a new direction. So even when something's finished, as long as I'm alive over the words, I'll just keep working them. So I guess I don't have an answer about when is it finished, but I feel like there's a place where I know where I can't go any further. Like other specific themes of my life, more narratives. I think some of the poems were written, in response to, and they're always looking back, because my father died like in 1987. So this is a deep part of my life that he's not there. And so that's always part of who I am, is my psyche. And I was also, in the last several years, the loss of my mother was part of the grief process of, which came into the writing. So, and also one of the things in the last 12 years I've been living in the desert, and that's something very different for my body. And I think mentally I've been reaching for a lot of images that are outside of my locale. So places that are wet, places that are cold, places I grew up. So again, I guess going back to childhood, places I know, landscapes with which I'm familiar, are images I, in my body, mind, hang on to. If that makes sense. Yeah.
And in addition to content, are there certain rituals or habits that inspire you or that you've used repeatedly over the course of time?
In terms of the writing, or in terms of the content,
The
process. The process. I think I've also kind of mentioned this today too, that I tend to be fragmented in a lot of my approaches. So, which is kind of it can be beneficial for writing poetry, because it forces you to be very specific when you come to the space where you have a moment to kind of write something down, almost like a haiku process, but you're adjoining multiple layers, stanzas, or making a larger whole. So process is a delving deep when I have a lot of time, but I don't always have a lot of time, so I take the time I have and use it as effectively as I can, and it usually comes out in short bursts. So always kind of paying attention, being in tuned, and trying to keep the channel open for the language, for the words to come in, and being able at that moment to use that time to write it down and have the energy to do so. A lot of people sometimes think of things in the shower. I don't take showers. I'm a bath person, but it's a little easier if I get an idea in the bath. So if you're if you're in the shower, just make sure you have a water notepad, and if you're in the car, don't write while you're driving, but pull over. And I've tried audio, but I do better with the writing. And I think even just the process of forcing yourself, pencil to paper, to see what comes out. I never was one for free writing, but I do believe in the contact with pencil or pen to paper as something that stimulates the brain and gets just keeping that. It's like a muscle in your brain. If you're, you have to kind of lift the weight to get the muscle. You have to kind of keep the thoughts flowing to keep the writing open. Yeah, what comes together is it didn't start. Well, I guess at different times there was an intention, so it can't be completely unintentional. But from the very beginning, writing a poem, I don't think, oh, this is going to be this book or that book necessarily. I might see some poems that I'm writing along a theme, like the divinations, that all just sort of they house well together. But how many did you have? Yeah, I was gonna say, I had a lot of them. In fact, I had at one point I had a manuscript that were just completely all divinations, and I thought that was too much. So I wanted not, because they seem a little abstract at some points, and so I thought I needed to, maybe include some other more narrative lyrical pieces in between to kind of sustain them as a grouping. But there are many more divination poems that are along the same theme, along the same process of the mantic style. So those will be somewhere in my future, hopefully, continuing.
Okay. Keeping in mind that a lot of this audience is in a writing
Yes.
program and geared up to write and publish and whatnot, do you have any little tidbit of advice?
Don't be afraid. Just keep hammering away with your own ideas, your interests. Just keep going. I mean, I think that was the thing I learned, is you just stay at it and you keep at it, and read as much as you can. It's these are things I think you'll hear over and over again, but and just be gentle with yourself. That's another thing I had to learn. Nothing's going to be perfect every time, and that's what learning is. And I think even now I'm still learning about myself, about my process, about writing, and it changes. And learning about your own process of what makes you tick, pay attention to what you pay attention to. I mean, and honor that. Don't think like you have to write like your neighbor or the other poets that you really admire. Just stay true to what you're interested in. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.